Hoarfrost-Z is a fantastic Titan exotic chest armor. It's going to turn your Titan into a stasis crystal machine, providing you and your team cover plus a whole bunch of stasis landmines on the battlefield. Well, today I'm going to walk through this Titan Stasis PVE build with Hoarfrost-Z, look at the aspects and the fragments, the weapons and the mods so you can dominate on the battlefield with ease in Destiny 2. Well, if you're new around here or find this useful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for all the latest Destiny 2 content and turn on notifications by hitting that bell. Roughly 98% of viewers who watch This Week in Video Games aren't subscribed, so subscribe today and never miss an update. Without any delay, let's dive right into this build. So first of all, we've got the stasis setup. So for my super, I'm using the Glacial Quake. For my class ability, I'm using a Towering Barricade. For my melee ability, it's a Shivering Strike, and for my grenade, I'm using a Glacier Grenade. Well, next up, looking at the aspects. So first of all, Tectonic Harvest. Shattering a stasis crystal creates a stasis shard. This shard grants melee energy when picked up by you or your allies. Also, Howl of the Storm. So while sliding, activate your charge melee ability to launch a wave of stasis energy, and that goes forward and it freezes your targets and creates stasis crystals. Next up, looking at the fragments. So first of all, Whisper of Rhyme. Collecting a stasis shard grants a small amount of overshield, and that falls off after 10 seconds. Collecting additional shards adds to the overshield and refreshes the timer. Then Whisper of Shards. So shattering a stasis crystal temporarily boosts your grenade recharge rate. Shattering additional crystals increases the duration of the benefit. Then you got Whisper of Change. So while you're near frozen targets or a friendly stasis crystal, you take reduced damage from targets. Finally, we've got Whisper of Fissures, so increase the damage and the size of the bursts of the stasis when you destroy a stasis crystal or defeat a frozen target. Well, next up, let's have a look at the exotic armor. So for this one, I'm using the Hoarfrost-Z. It's an exotic Titan chest piece. It comes with the perk Glacial Fortification. So when using your stasis subclass, your barricade becomes a wall of stasis crystals that slows nearby targets when created, and standing behind this barricade will grant you and your allies increased weapon reload speed, stability, and also range. We can get this one from Lost Sectors, Legend or Master when you complete them solo. Next up, let's have a look at the weapons. So first of all, in the kinetic slot, I'm using Perseus-D. This one is a legendary kinetic scout rifle that fires stasis damage. It's a high impact frame, meaning it's slow firing and high damage as well. The weapon is more accurate when you're stationary and you're aiming down sights. And Rapid Hit and Headstone would be a decent role for PvE content. In the energy slot, I'm using Le Monarch. So Le Monarch is an exotic energy bow with some really deadly perks. So you got Poison Arrows. Arrows fired quickly after a full draw become Poison Arrows, and precision hits with Poison Arrows spread poison to nearby enemies. Then you got Snapshot Sights, a faster time to aim down sights. Well, the Le Monarch Catalyst gives you extra stats when it comes to stability and reload speed. 30 stability and 20 reload speed. Plus you get Unrelenting as well, and that gives you health regeneration when you rapidly defeat targets. And that gives you health regeneration when you rapidly defeat targets. And this is going to make a really solid weapon even better, so I would definitely recommend going out there and getting the Catalyst for Le Monarch. When the power slot, I'm using Chain of Command, so it's a useful machine gun that comes with a selection of perks, also fires stasis damage. So we've got Adrenaline Junkie, Demolitionist, Osmosis, and Adaptive Munitions. I'm going for Adrenaline Junkie and Demolitionist here. Given the grenade focus of the build, Demolitionist in particular is really good because kills with the weapon generate grenade energy. So it is worth noting with the weapons, they are tailored towards barrier champions and overload champions. So, for example, I'm using my scout rifle, the Perseus-D, with the anti-barrier mod on my arms, and that is going to help me take down barrier champions. And then for the overload champions, I've got Intrinsic Overload with Le Monarch, and then I've got Overload Machine Gun mod as well on my arms for Chain of Command and taking down those Overload champions with my machine gun. The weapons are mix and match, so if you're watching this guide in the future and it's not Barrier or Overload champions, then you can swap out some weapons to make this build even better for you in the season that you are trying it. But what I would recommend in your kinetic and your power slot to use stasis weapons, as that goes really, really well with the stasis subclass and the build. Well, finally then, let's have a look at the mods. So I'm using Elemental Ordnance, defeating a combatant with a grenade spawns an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type. I'm using Bountiful Well, so Elemental Well mods that can use to spawn Elemental Wells now stack. spawning additional wells for each additional copy of the mod you have equipped. Basically, I'm going to be using more elemental ordnance, and that is going to help me generate more elemental wells. I'm using Font of Might, so picking up an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type grants a temporary bonus to weapon damage. Elemental shards, so stasis shards, count as stasis elemental wells for you. I'm using an anti-barrier scout mod, an overload machine gun mod, and also pumping my resilience up to over 100. And that gives me a 40% damage reduction and just keeps me safe out there in the high-end PvE content. Okay, so next up, let's have a look at the gameplay. So this build is focused all around the Stasis Titan and Hoarfrost-Z. So we're going to be using the Stasis crystals to shield ourselves in the battlefield, plus also use them as explosives to cause major damage to enemies. First of all, we've got our exotic armor, Hoarfrost-Z. That's got the perk Glacial Fortification, where your barricade becomes a wall of stasis crystals and slows nearby targets when created. Standing behind the barricade will grant you and your allies increased weapon reload speed, stability, and range. You can pair this up with our Glacier Grenade, allowing us to place strategic crystals on the battlefield. We can either hide behind them, freeze enemies with them, or shoot them to detonate them like a remote bomb. We can also use other aspects of our stasis setup here to help, so Tectonic Harvest. Shattering a stasis crystal creates a stasis shard. The shard grants melee energy when picked up by you or your allies. We've got Howl of the Storm, so you can slide and activate your charge melee to launch a wave of stasis energy that freezes targets and creates stasis crystals. You can use this with elemental shards to mimic shards into elemental wells. Then we can use that with Font of Might to boost our damage output by about 20%. Also got Whisper of Rhyme, where collecting a stasis shard grants a small amount of overshield. That does fall off after 10 seconds, but you can collect additional ones, and that will give you more overshield and it refreshes the timer. And Whisper of Shards too, so shattering a crystal temporarily boosts your grenade recharge rate, all works really, really well going into this build. Therefore, when we combine Whisper of Shards and Tectonic Harvest, we're generating both grenade and melee energy, meaning we're never really going to be short of energy on all of our abilities. Now finally, we've got Whisper of Chains, so while you're near a frozen target or a friendly stasis crystal, you take reduced damage from targets, going to be really useful in endgame PvE content. Given we've got a stasis build here, I would recommend Headstone on weapons if you can. I've got this on my Perseus D Scout Rifle, and it's really good this season because of the champion mods and that affinity with scout rifles. Also, using overload machine guns with chain of command, a stasis machine gun, and using Le Monarch also in the energy slot for the intrinsic overload capabilities. Now that way, barrier and overload champions shouldn't really stand a chance, and overall you are running 3 elemental weapons given stasis in the kinetic slot. Well, let me know what you think of the build down there in the comments and let me know your improvements. Well, that is it for this guide for a Titan Stasis PVE build with Hoarfrost-Z in Destiny 2. And as always, thank you so much for watching or listening. For more Destiny 2 content like this, hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to This Week in Video Games. Or you can check me out on Twitter at TWIVG Podcast. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful, liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out the videos on the channel. Well, thanks again, and I'll see you soon.